Did you know that women make up only about 13% of the engineering workforce in the United States? It's time to change that narrative. One of the biggest challenges faced by women in engineering is the lack of confidence and intuition. Society often undermines their abilities, leading to self-doubt and hesitation in pursuing their goals. Now, let me introduce you to a true trailblazer in the field of engineering, Layla El Khadri, feminine leadership mentor, speaker, and author. She's on a mission to empower women and bridge the gender gap in STEM fields. In today's episode, we're diving into a topic that's close to my heart, empowering women in engineering. I am your host, Tiffany Teachy, and this is Women in Engineering, Success Stories from STEM Professionals. And with that, let's jump right into today's episode. Today, I have with me Layla El Khadri. Layla, welcome to the Women in Engineering podcast.
Thank you so much, Tiffany. It's an honor to be here with you today.
Awesome. Layla, can you tell us a bit about yourself and your career journey? How did you transition from filmmaker to becoming a mentor for feminine leadership?
Thank you for the question, Tiffany. So I transitioned into coaching and feminine leadership mentorship over 15 years ago when I finished college, and I was ready to start in the work world. And I realized that the society we had created, the society I was invited to be part of, was a society that was not setting me up for success. Very early, I started feeling signs of anxiety, depression, and I decided to take a break, what I thought was going to be a 6-month break, to go find myself and find the ways to operate my mind, my body, and my emotions in a more healthy and effective way. And that journey became the rest of my life. And as I found some answers for my own well-being, I started to share it with the world. And what I did is I took my career as a filmmaker and I used it to create content that could help me spread this message and this work to millions of women.
Wow, that's powerful. I mean, the fact that she was able to make a difference, be able to take your skills with the filmmaking and be able to turn it in and help others, especially as women as well. So kudos to you for doing that. Now let's transition. What are some common self-limiting beliefs that women in engineering might face, and what strategies do you recommend for overcoming them?
Well, I think one of the most common self-limiting beliefs that women face in all industries, but I am aware that especially in the engineering world, is the imposter syndrome. This neurotic voice inside of our heads that says, you're not good enough, you're not going to make it, this is a man's world, what are you even doing here? And what I will say is the most powerful tool for us to deal with imposter syndrome, but also with pretty much any limiting belief, is to do the inner work, is to really invest time, energy, and resources into looking inside of our minds, inside of our hearts, and inside of our bodies, to find the blocks, to find the traumas, to find the places where we have accepted the narrative that society and our upbringing gave to us. And we have not questioned that narrative. Limiting beliefs are basically stories that we accepted when we were very little and that are still running in the back of our operational system without being reviewed. So really prioritizing personal work, prioritizing emotional and mental work, to look at that, to look at what it is holding us back, to understand it and to love it, to not to want to eliminate it or change it, but to embrace it, because our history is our legacy. And that also includes the parts of our history that are maybe not so beautiful. Different cultures carry different limiting beliefs, different races carry different limiting beliefs, different upbringings carry different limiting beliefs. And how can we look into them and understand them and make a strength out of what may look like a weakness?
That's it. many perceptions as far as how things are, but definitely love the fact that you said, turning it into strengths, utilizing those strengths. So I love how you shared that as well. Let's talk about the self-confidence and assertiveness. Engineering is often a male-dominated field. What techniques can women use to cultivate self-confidence and assertiveness in such environments?
Beautiful question. Well, the first thing I would say is that for all human beings, but we're talking here about women, one of the most powerful techniques that we can use to access our potential, to access our personal power, whether we want to use it for assertiveness or we want to use it for inner peace or we want to use it for magnetism, is to utilize our body. So I will direct our listeners to somatic therapy. Work with your body. Work with the relationship between your mind and your body. Somatic therapy is basically the approach to our lives, our leadership, our relationships, our passions through the body. Because what we know in somatic therapy is that it's the body what keeps the score. So we think that we can change things by changing the mindset, but the conscious part of our being is barely a 5%. And the 95% remaining is actually subconscious. And it is mostly programmed in the cellular memory of our body. So going into somatic therapy, going into movement-based therapy, going into embodiment practices is one of the most effective ways that I have found for women to transform some of the blockages that we face.
Wow. I love it. I'm gonna check into that because I love the whole movement piece. I need to do more of that. And I think we find ourselves always sitting a lot. So finding that would be very therapeutic. So I'm gonna definitely check into that. So thank you for sharing that. Now, how can women in engineering learn to trust and harness their personal intuition as a guiding force in their decision making and career advancement?
Amazing question. So if we look at ancient traditions, I studied some of the most powerful traditions of the East, like Taoism and Tantra meditation. What we find again and again is that they talk about two brains in the body. The first brain is actually not in the head, it's in the gut. That is where the intelligence of our body resides. And then the second brain, a secondary helper, will be located in the mind. So the brain of the gut is what we call the intuition. That's why we say, I got a gut feeling, right? And so for us to start practicing the lost art of intuition, we need to drop from our minds into our bellies. And one of the most beautiful things of this journey is in order to go from the mind into the gut, you have to go through the heart. And so it is very important in order to access the power of intuition that you access the power of your emotional intelligence, because intuition is going to speak in a way that's not linear, that's not rational, and that it's very much a feeling-based intelligence. And so it is a journey. It's not something that you wake up tomorrow and suddenly you have, because for a very long time you have not learned to trust your gut. But also because, unfortunately, if you're having a normal American diet, or even European nowadays, a normal Western diet, your gut is very intoxicated. It's basically like every morning you will open your brain and dump a bunch of coffee and sugar and fast food in there and then pretend for your brain to work optimally. So one of the first things I'll say is, if you really want to tune into your intuition, if you really want to be able to harness your gut power to clean your body, to start having a diet that supports a healthy gut, so that you then can start developing the ability to listen to the gut. And a very simple trick here, very simple exercise for our listeners to start already tomorrow or even today is start having this little game where every time that you have to make a choice, instead of going strictly and radically into pros and cons and shoulds and coulds and, rational thinking, making lists, pause, feel your body, feel your heart, feel your gut, and ask your gut. And you might feel a bit silly in the beginning. It's like, well, I'm talking with my stomach. Yeah. Talk to your stomach and ask, what would be the best option here? And then just listen to that first hint that comes. And not only the first hint, but how that first hint makes you feel. And then you will have a lot of information to start working with. A really good way to do this is with simple choices. Like, do I want vanilla ice cream or do I want chocolate ice cream? Do I want to take the underground or do I want to catch an Uber? And you will say that very often the first gut response that comes is the one that will support more your well-being, even though it might not be the one that your mind would like to choose based on all the rational points that your brain wants to give you.
This is good. I hope the listeners are taking some notes because I love it. I love it. I'm going to practice all these. You give some great tips, some strategies. I definitely want to do that because decision makings are there. And so I love how you said, let's pause and that instinct piece of it in your gut. I love it. I'm going to practice all of this that you're sharing. So thank you for sharing that. Now, as we talk about that, can you explain the concept of flow within structured productivity and how it's relevant for women in engineering? How can they achieve and maintain this state?
So I will explain flow in a very simple way. And for anybody who's listening here who is a neurobiologist or an expert in flow, just give me the grace. I'm going to simplify this for all our listeners to understand. So the flow state is a state that we enter where we feel that we can do it all. We are in flow means we are riding the wave, right? We are inspired. We are having access to our intuition, to our inspiration. It's basically what we can call a peak performance state. And there's several things that contribute to a peak performance state. The feeling of a peak performance state is selfless, is timeless, and is spaceless. Meaning you feel that you're connected to something way greater than yourself. That's where selfless comes from. You feel that time expands or contracts depending on the activity. So it could be like you are in flow state for 10 minutes and you feel like you've been in the vortex for 10 hours. Or it could be like you are in the vortex for 10 hours in the absolute flow, but when you come out, you go like, oh my God, that was just 5 minutes. But then you look at the watch and it's like, wow, I've been in flow for the last few hours. And then it's also spaceless because you have a altered sense of space. And that's also why in peak performance, we have access to much more of our physical strength, to much more of our skills. So when you enter this flow state, it's almost like we become, in a way, superheroes. What is it happening in our bodies at a chemical and brainwave level is that we are entering a state of theta brainwaves. It's a state that is very similar to the state of right before going to sleep. And we have a release of a certain set of chemicals among where we can find dopamine, endorphins, anandamide, and other chemicals that makes us access all of that potential. Now, in order for us to get there, we need to transition from what tends to be our place, what tends to be the place where we operate in everyday life, which is this place of struggle, which is when our brain is in theta brain waves and we are producing high levels of cortisol. And so how do we move from being in beta brain waves and in struggle into theta brain waves, flow, and all of these good cocktail of chemicals? Is we need to enter a place of release. We need to enter the transition between beta brainwaves and theta brainwaves is alpha. So we need to have this transition. And the best way to get there is by doing activities that create release for us. Because in that release, whether it's, walk in the countryside or driving your car on a nice highway with a nice music or laying on your back on a lake or, whatever it is that you choose, taking a hot shower sometimes is enough. What is happening is because we are in a state of release and in a state of relaxation, our brain is producing nitric oxide. And nitric oxide is going to shift the inner software of your brain into a state that's called transient hypofrontality. Transient means it's just for a little moment in time. Hypo means not a lot of. And frontality. And frontality is this part of our brain that is the most evolved part of our brain, which is the prefrontal cortex. And the prefrontal cortex is that inner neurotic voice of our mind that's constantly telling us, this is not good enough. Somebody has done it already. What are you thinking? Blah, 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 which is actually the stick on the wheel of our flow. If we will remove that, we will probably constantly in a much more inspired state of flow, because we will move through our impulses, our gut will talk, our heart will talk, our desires will talk, and we will just move through all of that with our brilliant brains and get into the world. But because we have this neurotic voice is constantly stopping us, it's very hard for us to enter those states of flow. When we get into states of release and we produce nitric oxide, then we get into transient hypofrontality, which basically is a moment where the image that I always like to share is like somebody just hit you with a pan on the front of your head and you lost none of your brilliant capacities. You only lost that self-judgment. And so how can we self-engineer these situations? How can we mediate our experience in order to get into these situations? Is by prioritizing and defending the times in our schedule when we do things that prompt release, especially if you know you have to write a very important paper, or you have to solve a complex problem, or you are about to step into a meeting where you need to, like, you really want to be able to be in a state of flow. Make sure that before you create space for yourself to be in release, so that you can then enter into the activity with the right neurochemistry that will allow you to access flow. Some of the most easy things to do to access flow is driving in a good highway with good music, going to the gym, taking a hot shower, even a walk in nature. And make sure that you prioritize these things, because something that happens in our minds is that we have been in this overly masculine world. We have been made believe that effectivity and productivity are king, and relaxation and restoration are a luxury. But we do not have access to productivity without relaxation. It's a catch-22. The more you stress, the less productive you're going to be.
You are speaking truth. You're speaking truth. I love it. I mean, you've hit the nail on it. I mean, you cannot do one without the other. It's going to cause the other. You got to have, I love that relaxation, that piece of it. The peace of mind is the biggest piece. So I love how you shared that with the flow of it as well. Emotional intelligence, which is crucial in any profession. So what are some practical ways for women in engineering to develop their emotional intelligence to navigate workplace challenges effectively?
Amazing. What a great question. Well, what I would say is that one of the biggest or most important keys for us to develop our emotional intelligence is to learn to listen to emotions. First your own, and then those of those around you. If you can develop an ability to listen beyond the words and to be able to tune into what the other person is feeling, you are going to have access to your emotional sovereignty. Because if someone comes to you lashing out or bossing you or projecting, and you're able to hear what the other person is feeling behind the words, this is going to give you space for you to make a choice of how do you want to respond that rather than react. This is not to say that we're going to allow disrespect and allow others to cross our boundaries, but it will allow us to understand, what is this person coming from? Is this person right now, talking to me in the wrong way because he's stressed, because he's afraid, because he feels insecure? Can I then address that in respectful way, acknowledging that I'm being disrespected, acknowledging that the way you're talking to me, it's not feeling right, but also having compassion. And this is a key for emotional intelligence, compassion for where you are coming from. One of the most dangerous places where we lose our emotional intelligence is because we are so reactive. Somebody comes to us with anger, with bitterness, or with stress, and we right away match them. It's crazy. It's like we lose our emotional sovereignty. You enter the room in peace, having a great day. You just had your morning coffee. You just did your yoga. You're feeling like $1,000,000. Somebody comes to you with a bunch of stress, and suddenly you choose to jump on their train and have a bunch of stress. So disempowering. When if you could develop listening, now you pause, you listen to this person, you hear what they say. Oh my God, we really need to run, blah, 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 blah. Okay, that's the first line. The second line is this person is stressed. And then do I choose to join them in the stress, or do I choose to remain in my peace and address whatever it is that's being brought to me? Emotional sovereignty, shifting from reaction to respond, is one of the most empowering keys for leadership, but also for anything in life, for motherhood, for relationships, for friendships, and definitely at work. It will help you not to take things personally.
That's good. That's good. I mean, don't take it personal. You do have to look at it from a different perspective. So I love how you showed the example of how to approach things. And so thank you for sharing that. Now, feminine leadership qualities. What are some feminine leadership qualities, and how can they positively impact business dynamics in the engineering field?
One of my favorite qualities of the feminine, and I want to make a little insert here because we are living in a current paradigm of a lot of discussion and reflection and even legislation around gender. And so we're using the word masculine and feminine here in a way that I really want to make clear. We are not talking about gender. When I say feminine qualities, I'm not saying female qualities. I'm saying feminine qualities. So let me just break it down very simple. At a biological level, we have male and female, which is determined by the biology of our body, but the expression of our sexual organs. At a society level, we have created roles, man and woman. And these roles, we can discuss about them. Do you identify with them or not? Not the topic of today's podcast. At a meta level, we have the qualities of energy. We have polarity. And a better way to use this so we can really completely get out of the gender conversation is the Taoist way of talking about polarity, which is the yin and yang. Yeah? We all know the symbol of the yin and yang, the white and the black, and inside of each other. So these are qualities of the primordial energy of the universe. So when I talk about the qualities of the feminine, I'm not talking about female qualities. I'm talking about feminine traits, and they can be found also in men. And we also have masculine qualities. It is dangerous because the words leads us back to gender. So I always like to explain this. So one of the qualities of the yin, the feminine energy that I appreciate the most and that I feel that we've lost in our society is the process oriented. We live in a society that is very masculine, very goal oriented, and we forget the process. It's like what is the sentence? The end justifies the means. And that's how we destroy the planet, how we destroy each other, how we destroy relationships. So to start bringing back into the work, attention to the process, because the process is life. Life is in the journey. The destination is the graveyard, ladies and gentlemen. Nobody makes it alive. So how about we start shifting our mindset into, hey, yeah, am I going to hit the KPIs of my company, but also is my company healthy in the process? Is people enjoying the process? Or are we compromising everyone's mental and physical health in order to hit some goal that ultimately it's not the reason why we are here. Because everyday life is what life is about, not some fantastic destination that, again, we reach when we die.
Yep. This perspective, I love it. I love it. That's good. That's good. Now, can you share some insights on optimizing productivity by aligning work schedules with natural biological cycles?
Okay, this one is definitely just for women. No, let me say this again. This is definitely just for females. This one works if your body is female. No matter how you identify, if you have a hormonal cycle, female hormonal cycle, you have an internal clock, and you can either work with it or work against it. That is there. It is aligned with the phases of the moon in very powerful ways. So you have four phases in your cycle. Whether you're menstruating or not, you're still operating. The first part of your cycle, which is your follicular phase, where your ovaries, where your eggs are still sleepy, getting ready to come into maturity. And you have your ovulation phase, which is the moment where your eggs blossom and they go out and get ready. And you have your luteal phase, when the egg realizes, I ain't going to be a baby this month. We're good to go. And then you have your menstrual phase, when the eggs get released, right? These four phases have their own set of chemistry, their own set of hormones. These hormones are going to affect your emotional, physical, and mental capacities. And learning them in depth, not just the theory of it, because I can give you a schedule, I can give you a map, but then you need to look at your own individual one and how yours work by feeling, journaling, taking notes, contrasting, and seeing the trends of your own body. Then you can schedule your life accordingly. You're going to be very productive, very directive, and very assertive in the first phase of your cycle, the follicular phase, because your testosterone is rising. You're going to be very magnetic, very attractive, very social in your ovulation for obvious reasons, right? Your biology wants to be attractive because you are fertile in that moment. It is very humbling to recognize that even though we're very sophisticated in our evolution, we do have physical bodies that are governed by the laws of nature. On the luteal phase, if your body has high levels of progesterone, your egg is dying, you're going through a death process, you don't want to be bothered. PMS means please make space. However, you're extremely intuitive. It's a really good time for insight. It's a really good time for self-reflection. It's a really good time to look at, okay, what worked and what didn't, what needs to go out together with this egg that's not going to be a baby. And then you have menstruation, which should be a time for you, should be a time for pause. And I am very proud to share with you that I have already been working 10 years according to my schedule. So my coaching calls, my programs, everything that is possible for me to schedule, gets scheduled 3 weeks a month. And the last week, the fourth week, is for me to chill out, to relax, to rest, to rejuvenate, to reconnect with myself, and to bleed in peace. Not to have to be taking pills to balance the cramps so they can still perform and pretend that nothing is happening. Because something is happening, something major. What's happening, it's the part of our life that is our contribution to humanity is because women bleed, the babies are born. So let us respect that and take some time to honor it.
Wow. I mean, who would have thought you could break it down in that time frame? But you're so right as far as your productivity. I look at it so differently. So thank you for that. Thank you. That you are bringing some gems and some great tips and knowledge. I love it. Your wisdom is great. Now, how can women leverage the body, mind, connection to enhance performance, build emotional resilience, and communicate effectively in leadership roles?
Amazing question. By becoming aware of the mind-body connection and by doing the work to unlock things that are stuck in our bodies. Women are going to be able to step out of reactivity, which is solving the issue of emotional intelligence. They're going to be able to access their potential, access their energy, access their stamina. Because one of the reasons why our performance sometimes is poor is because there is so much of our energy and the bandwidth of our being that is just holding trauma. It's just holding trauma. If you enter a room and you're not aware of your insecurity, your fear, your sense of inadequacy, and you are doing your best to show up and perform, there's a big part of your bandwidth that is just holding it together. The moment that you do work in the mind-body connection, the moment that you do somatic work, the moment that you start liberating all of those blocks in your body, you clear all of that bandwidth. And so you have access to more of your potential, more of your skills to have a better performance. And it's also going to support in our effective communication and leadership, which is the last part of your question, because it will help us access our mental capacity. It will help us access our sharpness, because we will not be regulating our nervous systems. We will not be coping. We can go from survival into thriving. So it should be a key part of our work, our everyday work, to clear this mind-body connection so that we can really fully have access to all of our abilities.
Just love it. I love it. I mean, you got to be able to tap into it. And so that's some great examples of how to go about doing it. Now, as we finish up and close out, what final piece of advice can you give to women engineers striving to navigate personal growth and professional success?
I would say that it is time for us, ladies, to reclaim our radiance. It's time for us to remember our magnetism, to allow ourselves to explore our feminine wisdom. I think it's time for us to heal our sexuality and our sexual shame, heal our relationship with our feminine essence, shift our mind that feminine essence, feminine wisdom, feminine radiance is a plus, is a thing for the weekends to look prettier and fresher, and understand that, as we spoke during our interview, we are designed to be successful at being ourselves. So if you are a female, if you're a woman, if you are in this body, learning about this body and reconnecting with this body, but also reconnecting with the wisdom of the feminine is going to allow you to reclaim your radiance, to reclaim your freshness, to reclaim your magnetism, to reclaim your beauty, to reclaim your feeling good, to reclaim your pleasure. And from there, life is fun. From there, we can go and become successful in the world, because we will be operating in alignment with our original blueprint, which is an amazing, magnificent woman.
Love it. I mean, this has been amazing. I mean, you've given so many great tips and everything. I'm definitely taking some and going to implement them myself. So talk to us. Tell us, how can everyone get in touch with you? This is just the last question of any, ways that people can get in touch with you further.
Well, come over to social media, hang out with me on Instagram, Layla El Khadri. You can also check my YouTube, my Facebook. I have also a Facebook group that you can join. She leads. You can also find me on my website, laylaelkhadri.com. And if you want to right away, you listen to this podcast and you're like, oh my God, I want to work with you. I am giving a part of my practice, which I've called Presence. It's an embodiment somatic practice that helps you work through your body in all of these things that we've been talking about. So maybe Tiffany can share with you the link, or you can find it. It's pretty much everywhere on my social media, on my landing pages. You can download a practice for free so that you can have an experience, feel it in your body, and understand this mind-body connection from an experiential place. That's my gift to you.
Love it. Thank you so much for being such a great guest on the show. And I appreciate all the great wisdom that you've been able to provide.
Thank you so much for having me, Tiffany. It's been real treat to be here with you today.
Thank you for listening. Be sure to subscribe to our podcast so you won't miss our upcoming episodes, which are featuring interviews with inspired women engineers, discussions about industry, trends, and much more. Go to womeninengineeringpodcast.com, where you will find a summary of the key points discussed in today's episode, as well as the links to any of the resources, websites, or books mentioned during this episode. Until next time, may your engineering endeavors be as remarkable as the women whose stories we're sharing. Stay curious, keep innovating, and engineer a better future.